Hello and welcome to the End Times Revival Ministries. Thank you so much for joining us today. The last couple of weeks we have been looking at the glory of God, and I want us to move to a slightly different series which we will title Familiarity with God. My objective is not to teach you on how to become familiar with God. Far from that. My objective is to try and show you by the help of the Holy Spirit that we are not to be familiar with God for the reasons that are affiliated to His character and the fact that He is God who is transcendent above all. I want us to pick up a passage for our beginning. We will find this passage in the book of Leviticus chapter 10 verse 1 to 3. And this is a story of Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron. I won't read the whole of the passage, but what happens here is that Nadab and Abihu, sons of Aaron, they go and sacrifice a fire before God, or they offer some sacrifice and they set fire before the altar. And what happens next is that God's fire, or fire, proceeds from the place that God was supposed to be and consumes them instantly. They die instantly. And Moses then goes to Aaron, and we would expect Moses to comfort Aaron and to explain to him, or perhaps to sympathize with him, because God has devoured his two sons. But what Moses says, Moses stands on the side of God, and this is how Moses responds. This is what the Lord spoke, saying, "By those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy. Before all the people, I must be glorified." Moses discovers what the problem is here. The problem, according to Moses and what history accounts here, is that these two sons of Aaron had become familiar with God. Of course, they were sons of a priest. They grew up in the priesthood. They saw their father offering sacrifices before the altar. They were close to Moses as well, given that Moses and Aaron were working together. And so they were quite familiar with the religious protocols that were carried out during the process of sacrifice. But what happens here, as we see, is that somehow they make a decision to go and sacrifice before God, but God had not made that command. They breached the protocol of this sacrifice. And what happens then is that God consumes them as a way of sending a message to everybody else that this is not acceptable before me. And for once we would think how brutal God is. Aaron had served God for the better part of his life as a priest. How can God repay Aaron by destroying his two sons? And they were trying to do a religious duty. They were trying to do something that was good, perhaps. But what we realize here is that God does not compromise His character. And He had made this declaration to Moses and to all the people that I must be regarded as holy. I am not to be treated with cavalier attitude or with familiarity. I am not one of you. I am a holy God, and you are sinners. And as much as you are my people, I need you to realize that my character as God does not allow me to compromise the fact that if you break my law or you make a sacrifice that you're not supposed to do and I go along with it, I can't do that. I must be glorified, for I am holy. Now you ask yourself, what has this got to do with the New Testament? Well, keep that question in mind. In the next couple of weeks, we will answer that question on how this particular passage relates to the New Testament. Because for the most part, a lot of people will argue that this is the Old Testament order and you are not supposed to come before God. But for a beginning, I want us to perhaps look at the fact that God is eternal. The character of God, it follows, is also eternal. If God is eternal, that means He never changes. If God changes, He wouldn't be God, because He would change to something greater or something lesser. So He stays constant, because that is the measure. He is the measure of perfection. At any moment that God changes, if we argue that God changes, we are not talking about God. God, if He is eternal and immutable, he stays the same, which is why in the New Testament we are told he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He never changes, because change by very nature assumes that you are moving to a better status or a worse status, and God never changes in that way. This character of God is eternal. He is holy. He must be glorified among all people, and he might not respond to us in the same way that he responded to Nadab and Abihu, but in the end of the age, as you see in the book of Revelation, he will, because his character is eternal. By those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people I must be glorified. That is forever.